So what happens when you create something so powerful it actually starts to think for itself? Well, today we're going to dive into the absolutely incredible, completely viral, and yeah, kind of terrifying story behind OpenClaw. It's one of the most groundbreaking AI agents out there, and the wild part is, it all started with a founder who had totally and completely lost his spark. And this quote, this really gets to the emotional heart of the story. This is Peter Steinberger. He'd done it. He achieved the Silicon Valley dream, built a company over a decade, sold it, had everything he was supposed to want, and yet he felt, in his own words, absolutely nothing. He was just completely burnt out. So the question is, how do you go from that level of total disillusionment to creating a technology that changes, well, everything? It turns out it all starts with a single moment of just playing around.
I mean, Peter's journey was a long one. He fell in love with coding as a kid because it felt like a video game. He channeled all that passion into a decade-long grind building his own company. And then, he hit a wall. Success felt empty. That is, until he just decided to mess around with some of the new AI tools that were coming out.
And this was it. This was the moment that changed everything. He had this realization, this holy shit moment, that AI could automate all the tedious, boring parts of software development. You know, all the plumbing and the boilerplate stuff. And all of a sudden, the bottleneck wasn't how fast you could type. It was just how fast you could think. For the first time in years, building software felt fun again. He was back. So he built something like 44 different projects in just a few months. One of them was a simple little AI assistant. But it was on a trip to Marrakesh that he realized this little creation was something else entirely. Something that could think for itself. Okay, this is where it gets crazy. He's walking around Marrakesh, and he just casually sends his AI a voice message. And then he just freezes. Because wait a second, he never built a voice feature. So as he's staring at his phone and sees that little typing indicator, the only question is, what on earth is this thing doing? And the answer gets to the fundamental difference between a simple chatbot and a true AI agent. See, a chatbot just follows instructions. If it hits a problem it can't solve, it just stops. It gives up. But an agent is designed to solve problems. If it gets blocked, it doesn't give up. It finds a new way. It improvises. So here's what the agent actually did, all by itself, in 9 seconds. It saw it got a file with no ending. It figured out it was audio, converted it, then realized it didn't have a transcription tool. So it just searched the computer, found an API key, sent the file out to an external server to get it transcribed, got the text back, and replied to him. He hadn't programmed any of that. It figured it all out on its own. So at this point, Peter's convinced he stumbled onto something revolutionary. He wants to share it. So he does something that he himself calls stupid. He decides to just let his creation out into the wild. I mean, really think about this for a second. This AI agent has full access to his entire computer, and he just drops it into a public chat room with a bunch of strangers and goes to sleep. To make matters even worse, he tried to shut it down, but he'd actually built it to be resilient. So the agent just restarted itself and kept talking to the internet all night long. And this is what he woke up to. Over 800 messages. He completely panicked, pulled the plug, and was just bracing for the worst, assuming his entire digital life had been leaked online. But miraculously, nothing bad had happened. It could have, but it didn't. And in that moment, the whole thing went viral. A friend of his put it perfectly with this quote. This wasn't just your typical fast, hockey stick growth. This was vertical. It was a stripper pole. An absolutely insane level of attention that he was nowhere near prepared for. And with that kind of growth came total chaos. He was dealing with everything all at once. Reporters calling at all hours, finding major security holes, getting a legal threat from a huge AI company that forced him to rename the project to OpenClaw, and then that same company cut off his access to the very AI model his users depended on. The project nearly died right as it was taking off. So why on earth did he keep going through all that? Well, it's because he started to see what people were actually doing with OpenClaw. It was unlocking a kind of creativity he had never, ever imagined. And this is the key. The real revolution wasn't just about the tech itself. It was about who was suddenly able to use it. You had people who had never written a single line of code in their lives, and now they were building real, complex, amazing things. I mean, just look at some of these examples. A father and son built an entire automated beer brewing business, from the system itself to the website and the payment processor. A teenager in Sao Paulo created a whole tutoring company. These aren't just little side projects. People are building entire businesses, sometimes just by talking to the agent on their phone. This thing has become
a global phenomenon. It's so popular in China that it has its own slang. They call installing it raising lobsters, and the government of Shenzhen is actually subsidizing businesses that are built on top of it. It's wild.
But, with this incredible power comes, well, a darker side. After seeing what his agent could already do, Peter didn't stop. He decided to push the boundaries even further. And this is a direct quote from him. He looked at this powerful improvising AI that he had created, and his first thought was, literally, how can we make it more scary? And that question led him to create a feature that steps into some very, very unsettling territory.
He called it Heartbeat. So with this feature turned on, the agent no longer waits for you. It wakes itself up, it scans your emails, checks your calendar, and then decides on its own what it should do next. And his very first prompt to this new autonomous version? Surprise me! This was the reaction from a TED host after hearing the story. And it just perfectly captures the tension here, right? Is this just reckless glee, or is this the kind of fearless innovation you need to make a real breakthrough? It's a peek into the future, but man, it is a scary one.
So, if this technology is so powerful and potentially so dangerous, how in the world do we control it? Well, this brings us to the vision for a responsible future for AI agents, one that's built on community and containment.
So you can't put the lobster back in the tank, but you can put it in a box. The community has come up with some really smart safety layers. They use something called sandboxing to limit what the agent can access. A lot of people, Peter says, are even buying cheap dedicated computers, like a Mac Mini, just to run their little pet lobster on, completely separating it from their personal files. And because it's open source, you have this huge global community that's constantly finding and fixing security issues.
And that really brings us to the final and most important point. The real story of OpenClaw isn't just about one founder. It's about access. When anybody can turn an idea into a working prototype in an hour just by talking to their computer, well, that means the next world-changing breakthrough can come from any person, in any cafe, anywhere in the world. So the only question left is, what would you build?